The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome along to the webinar. How are you all doing today? Thank you all for coming along. It's great to see so many of you here today. Hello, Dr. Jussi from the Canary Islands. Well, I'm coming to you from London and I can say that the weather here is absolutely terrible. It is pouring with rain, so I'm jealous of you being in the Canary Islands. I hope it's better for you over there than it is here. Just before we get going then, can I just get a quick sound and screen check? Can everyone hear me okay? And can you see my screen? It's a getting started webinar funnel in Convertri. Okay, excellent. It looks like we are good to go then. So, just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Dan and I work here at Convertri, and you may have seen me in the customer support desk or our Facebook group where I've probably helped you out in the past, or if not, hopefully can help you out in the future. This is me here just to put a face to my name. And today I'm going to be taking you through a lead funnel that we're going to build just like this one here. So at the end of the webinar, we'll have something like this. And the idea today is that you can build this page from scratch, and basically it will be a live funnel. So someone can come to your page, add their name, add their email address, opt into your autoresponder list, and then download a lead magnet for free. So once they click this button, they'll be taken to a thank you page where they can download the lead magnet. So once we've gone through that, I'm going to show you some of my favorite tips and tricks in the Convertri editor that will make your life using Convertri so much easier. So we'll go with that sort of format, and what we'll do is, if you've got any questions along the way about the demo, so while we're building this page, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you think of anything that's sort of wider related to Convertri, like more general questions, if you can save those for the very end, then that will be much appreciated, just so we can keep it moving nice and smoothly. So at the end, we'll have a more general Q&A session if you've got any queries at all. So before we get started then, if I could just ask if you can drop a number in the chat between 1 and 10 from how familiar you feel you are with Convertri. So 1 being that you're basically a complete beginner, you've barely used it, and then 10 being that you feel like an expert at Convertri, just so we can see what level we've got here. Okay, great. We've got a few 1s, a 3, a 7. That's definitely, the right level then for today's webinar, which is great. So hopefully we can boost those numbers by the end. Okay, let's get into it then. So the first thing that we are going to need to do is add our page. So we've come here into our funnel and we then click New Page on the right-hand side. Now you'll see here we've got a list of templates. These are all the Convertri templates that you get when you sign up, but we're actually going to use a page from scratch, mainly because we want to show you the whole process, but also because it is actually quite fun to build out a page from scratch. Gives you a lot more satisfaction, and just designing your own page is quite an enjoyable process. So we'll click Create Page from Scratch, and we'll just give it the name Opt-in, and then click OK. And you can see now we've got our page here. So we'll click Edit Page, and that will open up the page builder. And as you can see, at the moment, it is completely blank. This is a fresh slate here for us. So what we want to do first is get our background image onto the page. So this toolbar on the left-hand side is the Elements toolbar. So this is where you add all of your elements onto the page. And as you can see here, we've got the option to add an image. So we'll select that, and it's going to open our image modal. Now you've got two choices when uploading an image to Convertri. The first of which that I'll show you is to use our Pixabay integration. So if you click Search Pixabay, and then you can search for anything you want, and what it will do is it will pull images that are free to use, stock photos straight from Pixabay, and you can then add them onto your Convertri pages. So someone can just drop like an object in the chat, and then I'll have a search for that just to demo it for you. Okay, so we've got Apple. So let's search for Apple. And as you can see, it just pulls automatically loads of different images related to the word apple. You can see we've got some that are to do with the fruit or some that are to do with the computer. And then you can make your selection and click on it and then add it to your page by clicking select. Now, we're not going to do that today. The main reason for that is because although we are integrated with them directly, the only maximum resolution size that we can have with these images is 1920 by 1280. So as you can see here, that is the max resolution. Now, when you upload an image from your own folders, there is no max resolution. And because Convertri's page loading speed is so fast, it doesn't actually slow it down, even though the image size is a lot larger. So you may as well take advantage of that feature and upload your own images that don't have the resolution cap on them. So to do that, you can click the home folder here, and you can see these are all the images that I've uploaded so far. But to upload a new one, you click on this blue bar that says upload, and that will then take you to your folders. And this is where you then upload your image. So I've selected mine from my files, and you can see it is now loaded into the image folders that I've got here. Click on it and then click select. And as you can see, the resolution is much higher than it would be if we pulled this straight from Pixabay. So add it to our page by hitting select, and then the image is on our page. Now we want it to be a background, so we want to make this full width, and we can do that by clicking these double-ended arrows here, and that will stretch it all the way out to the edges of the page. You can see we haven't lost any quality, which is great. And we'll move it down now and just extend it out a little bit so that it hits the top. And then we'll do the same at the bottom, just so it's giving us a bigger page to work with. Like so. So now we've got our background image on. The next thing that we want to do is get the header and footer panels on. So you can see here we've got this beige looking bar and the same at the bottom. So to do that, we're going to use the panel element. Click that to add it onto a page. And then we're going to resize it like this, which is our height. And again, we're using the full width tool to snap it to the edges either side of the page. Now we can actually drag our image down like so and then move the panel up. And you can see you've got the pink snap line, so you know when you're hitting the next element. And then at this point, we're going to want to change the background color of this panel. So you can see the default is set to gray. If you come to element properties, select background, and then open the color picker. This is where you can choose the actual color of your element. So you can see it's the gray to start with, but as we're dragging it around, we've got black and we're moving it over to red. And the great thing about this is that it actually changes live as you do it. So you can compare colors really easily. You don't have to wait for it to apply and then go back and change it. It actually changes live as you move it, which I think is really cool. So let's just say we want a similar color to the demo page. You can see we've got the different colors here, and then this is more for shading. So we'll go, it's roughly about that light beige that we want. So click select to save, and then we can close our properties. Now we want the same panel that we've got at the top at the bottom, but instead of adding a panel from scratch, what we can do is click the clone element button up here. And what that does is give us an exact copy of the element that we've just cloned. So instead of doing all that again, we've just clicked one button and it's done it for us. So we can drag this down again to the bottom of the page, and we'll extend this one out a little bit. And now we've got the header and footer panel, which is great. So our page is now set up and we can start adding our form onto the page. So we're going to use a panel again. This time it's going to be the background panel for our sign up form. So we'll resize it like roughly about that big. We can obviously change this later on if we need to. And once we've done that, the next thing for us to add is our text. So we use the text element on the left, drag it onto our panel, and then we need to start entering the copy. So I'm just going to do that now. So we'll enter our title, which is 7 top tips for slimming without starving. And then we want the copy to go in describing what our lead magnet is. So I'm just going to type this out now. And you can see as I'm typing this, even though the text element box isn't actually big enough for the text, it's just automatically increasing the size. So we don't need to make sure the size is set before we type. As we type, the text box will increase in size, which is obviously really handy if you're typing a long piece of text in. So we've got that there on the page, and the last 2 bits we need to add are just a prompt for our prospect. So enter your details below. And then we'll add the full stop actually. And finally, we want just a little bit of text just to let our prospects know that we are never going to send them spam emails. And the spam text, it isn't actually like a legal requirement on pages like this, but it is just a good idea because it's obviously reassuring your prospects that they're not going to be getting any spammy emails off you. So if you're building out a page like this, I'd always recommend just having a little piece of text like that to reassure them. Okay, so we've got all our text on the panel now. The next thing that we want to do is just change how this looks. Now, there are 2 ways you can do this in Convertri. The first way is by editing the text, like each text box at a time. So you can see we've got 3 separate text boxes here, but we obviously want them all to look the same. So you can select one text box and highlight it and edit the settings up here. But what is easier to do is going into the page settings and using our default text styles. So if you click on default text styles, you'll see you have 3 options. You've got paragraph, heading 1, or heading 2. And you do actually have a 4th, which is hyperlink, but we won't worry about that here. So for paragraph, this is what each text element is automatically set to when you add it to a page. So you can see at the moment we have got it set to Roboto. But we want to change this a little bit. So we're going to change it from Roboto to Lato. And if you watch carefully at the text behind the page settings modal, you'll see it change as I select this. There you go. You can see it's changed now to Lato and each one changed. And that is because we're controlling the text style now for the whole page. So every time we enter a text element, this is what it will be set to. So we've changed it to Lato. We will change the font size to, actually we'll keep it at 16 and we'll change the line spacing instead. So 1.5 should do. And then we'll click done. And like I said, as you can see, it's changed all of those for us automatically. Now, obviously we want the heading to be slightly different from the main text so it stands out. So we'll go back into our page settings, back to default text styles, and then this time we'll select heading. So now we're controlling the text elements that have been set to heading. Now, at the moment, none of these are actually set to heading. So when I make the changes, it won't update automatically like it did for the paragraph text, but we can edit it afterwards so that it is set to the heading. So we'll change the font again and we'll go Noto Sans. We'll keep it at bold and we'll change it down to about 24. 36 is quite large for this type of form. And that should do the trick there. So we've set it up now. All we need to do is change our heading text to actually be set to the heading format. So we highlight it, come up to this more drop down, and here is where you can determine which text style it is being dictated by. So this time we'll select heading 1, and then as you can see, it automatically changes it to match the heading style that we set up. So that is now our text all done. The next thing that we want to do is add our form elements. So we need to add a section where people can insert their name, a section where people can insert their email, and finally a button for them to submit their details and be taken to the thank you page. So to do that, we come down to form elements. Firstly, we'll select first name, drag it onto our form, and then we select email. You can drag it like this as well. And then lastly, we'll select submit, and this is our button. So all of these are now on the form, on the panel, and they're all contained within this panel, just like our text. And again, we'll want to update them to match the text styles. Now, there isn't a way to do that for every time you add a form button or a form element. So you have to do this manually. So you click on your element, go into the element properties, and then go to input properties. And this is where you can edit how it looks. So you can even edit what the placeholder text is. If you just wanted to have, say, name instead of first name, you can change that. We'll keep it as first name though for this example. You can change the color. Again, we're going to keep these as they are. And then you can change the font family. So we'll change this to Lato to match our other style. And we'll keep it at 16. And then we'll do the same for the email one. And then on our submit button, again, we go to button settings this time. We want the mode to be sign up, as that will sign our prospect up to our autoresponder list. And then we want the label to actually be download, as they're going to be downloading a lead magnet from our thank you page. And then we'll change the text font to match the heading. So we've got Noto Sans, and we'll make it bold, and we'll do the size. 24 is quite big for the button itself, so we'll just have 20. Okay, excellent. So we've now got our form basically complete. All the information is on there anyway. The last thing we need to do is make sure it looks nice and tidy. So as you can see at the moment, they're all sort of a little bit skew with here. The text don't line up. It's not centered to the form. So we want to fix that. And luckily in Convertri, you don't have to do this manually. So instead, we can select our backing panel. And then up here, we've got our alignment tools. So the first thing that we want to do is center align each element within the panel. So we hit the drop down arrow, and then we use the center align tool. So we click that. And as you can see, everything in the form has now snapped to the middle of the panel. Now, the next thing that we want to do is space this out a little bit. So we are doing this manually, but this is not a problem. We can just either drag it up like that, or we can use our arrows on our keypad. So I'm just clicking my arrows here. And I'm going to leave the elements, the form elements, a little bit uneven so I can show you another alignment tool that Convertri has. And that is the justify vertically, distribute vertically, I should say. So we'll select them all like so, and that's how Convertri knows we want it applied to just these three elements. Again, we come to our alignment options, and then we just click distribute vertically. And as you can see, it's now automatically evenly spaced these out for us. So we don't have to use our really keen eye to manually do that. It's done it for us. So now we are good to go. I'll move that up slightly. And then we're actually going to want to just take this down a little bit so they looks a bit different from our copy. So we'll change this to 12. And we'll do the same with the spam text because it's not a focal point of the form. It's just a little bit of extra information. And we'll center align that. Okay, so our form is now good to go in terms of the way it looks. One last thing we want to do. As you can see on the demo page, we've got this transparent effect here, and we've got these rounded edges. So we'll show you how to achieve that as well. So you come into your element properties, background, and then open the color picker. And instead of choosing a shade and a color, we're going to change the transparency on this right hand bar. As you can see, again with the color picker, you can see the changes live as they're taking effect, which is really useful for designing a page. So we'll go about 0.75 just to give it a little bit of opacity. You can slightly see through it, but it doesn't affect the readability of the page here. So we'll click select to save it, the back arrow to take us back to our main properties, and then we'll click borders, and this is where you can get the rounded edges effect. Now you can either change one as you want, like so, using the arrows, or you can type a value in, or you can change them all at the same time by clicking this button here and then typing your value in. So we'll go 20. I mean, you can have a play around and see what you like. Anything other than, I'd say 50 is starting to look a little bit silly, but 20 just gives it a nice clean finish. So that is our opt-in page pretty much all set up now in terms of the desktop view. The one last thing we need to add is our privacy policy, and we can do that by adding a text element. So we want it at the bottom. We're just going to type privacy policy. As you can see now, because we set the default styles up, it's already on Lato, like so. And then we'll highlight it. And to add our privacy policy link, we just use the hyperlink tool. And then you type your link in like so. So I'm just going to put the Convertri privacy policy page. Obviously, feel free to add your own. Okay, so we've got that in now. We're going to center align that to the middle of the page and use this one here, page center. And now we've got that link all sorted. So our desktop page is pretty much done for now. But what we also want to make sure is looking great is our mobile page. Obviously, I'm sure you're all aware of how important mobile traffic is these days. So it's really useful that Convertri has a separate editor for the mobile design. That allows you to make small changes if you want to, or just have it automatically built out as you can see here. So this is Convertri's mobile page, and this has been done all automatically. I haven't had to do anything. We've got a completely working mobile page here if we wanted to keep it like this. I'm going to show you how you can make a few changes though, just for the sake of this demonstration. So let's say we want to move the header and the main text around. Let's say we want to swap those out. So you can select the heading, move it down like so, and then move that up. And you'll notice that even though we've changed it on the mobile page, if we go back to the desktop view, it hasn't actually changed it at all. So you do get a completely separate style when you're designing your mobile page. None of the changes you make here will affect the desktop page, which is obviously really useful. Now we've made that change and it's obviously great that we can do that, but let's say we don't actually like it, and imagine yourself designing a bigger page here where you've made loads of changes that you actually don't like. Now you don't want to have to manually move them all back to the way they were. Luckily, we've got our remobilize feature, which will put it back to the original automatically created version of the mobile page. So select that, click remobilize all, and you'll see it snaps back to the exact same page that we had originally. So we'll leave the mobile page like that for now. That is all done, and we can go back to desktop, save our page, and now we will move on to the thank you page. So I'll come out of the page editor, and what we're going to do now to create our thank you page, we're not going to use this new page option. We're actually going to clone our opt-in page. And that is basically because we want the thank you page to be really similar to the opt-in page. We want like a bit of consistency there. So essentially, we're using our first page as a template. So we'll click the three-dot menu. I'll just show you that again. It's this three-dot menu here, and then click more, and you've got all these options, and we want to click clone. And what that will do, we'll give it a name. We'll just call it thank you. That gives us an exact copy of our opt-in page. So now we can just open the page editor and make some really subtle changes so that it's in the style of a thank you page. So as you can see, we've got the page is exactly the same. So we're just going to make a couple of small changes so that we can have our thank you page set up. So we'll get rid of our inputs. We don't need the email or the first name box anymore. And we don't need our prompt or our spam text. And we don't even really need this copy. We can change this now because if they've clicked through this far, they already know what the guide will be. We can just have a prompt like, click the button below for our guide on our 7 top tips for slimming without starving, like that. And then we'll move the button up like so, and then we can change the height of this so it doesn't look disproportionate, and then we can move this further to the center like so. So we'll just move this down slightly. Excellent. So we've now got our download panel, and this is where our prospects will actually click to download the lead magnet. So what we need to do is we need to select our button, go to element properties, and we need to make sure that it is fit for download purpose. So button settings and then mode. Where we had it set to sign up, we now need to change this to download. And what this means is that we can attach a file to the button. So as you can see, we've now got the option to select a file. So we click this, and this takes us to a similar modal to our images. This is our file library, and you can see here, these are the files I've uploaded in the past. And it's also worth noting that individual files are limited to 40 megabytes. And what that means is the maximum file size you can upload in one go is 40 megabytes. So if you do have a file that's bigger than that, what I would suggest doing is getting it hosted on somewhere like Amazon S3 and then pasting that link into the button. So instead of it being set to download, you can change it to link and then paste the link in here, and that will take a prospect directly to that page where they can then download it for themselves. But in this case, we are going to be fine to upload our PDF. It is a small file, which is perfect. So again, you can upload it using this button here. I've already got it in my file library, so I'll just select that and then click select. And now this download is ready for a prospect. Now the forced download on click is a personal preference. I would always leave it off just because it just gives the user the choice to download it, then it's not automatically saved to their computer. But again, that is personal preference, but I'm going to leave it off for now. And then finally, I'm just going to change the background color of the button so it stands out a little bit from our opt-in page, just so it's not completely identical. So that is done now. And this page is now ready to be published. So we can click publish, and then we'll give it a path. We'll just call it thank you. As you can see, this is our URL. So without the thank you, it is just the domain name. But with the word thank you, that is then /thank you. So we'll hit publish. And as you can see, the page is now live on the web. Now we'll save it, and what we need to do now is go back to our opt-in page, and set up our form so that it is actually live and working and someone can be added to our autoresponder list. So we'll go back to our funnel and then open our opt-in page. Yeah, no worries that you're a little bit late, Sean. There'll definitely be a replay added up. It'll probably be by the beginning of next week at the latest, but there'll definitely be a replay. So don't worry about that at all. You can catch that, no problem. Right, so we're back to our opt-in page and we need to set up our form. So to do this, we go into the Forms modal and then we select autoresponders. And as you can see here, this is the list of all Convertri's integrated autoresponders. So we've got MailChimp, GetResponse, Aweber, ActiveCampaign. As you can see, the list is quite long. We're going to use MailChimp today. That is my autoresponder of choice. It's the one I've got integrated. So we'll use that one for this example. It really doesn't matter though, it is a personal preference. So we'll search for our target, and this is the list that you've set up in your autoresponder. In this case, mine is just called Dogs Training Help. And once you've done that, you can see you've got this option here for your fields. Now we've got first name because that is what's on the page, and we've got email, and that is a fixed field in MailChimp. So we actually have to have an email field if we're using MailChimp. And once we've got that confirmed that these are the only two fields on our page, we'll see here that the type is set to first name and the type for this is set to email. And I'll explain why that's important in just a moment. For now though, we can click next, and then we can click our thank you page URL. So we actually are going to type this out. We don't actually want to type this out. So what we're going to do is click clear, and we're going to go back and make it so that we don't have to type that out, just because it saves us time in the long run. I should have really done this before we went back onto the opt-in page, but it doesn't matter. We can show you it now. So we'll click on the new arrow button, and what this does is you drag it and hit the thank you page, and that's now connected these pages. So when we go back to our opt-in page and we go to set up a form, so we'll use our autoresponder again, click next to get back to where we were, and as you can see, it's automatically put that URL in there. Now, just like you saw, I didn't want to type the whole URL out. In this case, I couldn't actually remember what it was, so I had to go back and either look at the published page or in this case use the arrow. But I would always recommend using the arrows like that. You'll see here the suggestions, and this basically shows any other pages that you might have coming off the opt-in page. So if we had like multiple pages and we had multiple arrows, they'd all be listed here. So we've got that though now set up, and we want it to redirect, so we'll leave this off and then we'll click done. So our form is now all set up, and the last thing that I want to show you is the field types. And it's important that these match up to what they are in your forms list, because this is how Convertri knows to pass the information on. So if you select the first name and then go to Form Field Settings in Element Properties, you'll see here that the field type is first name. And that is what it will set to in forms, so we want them to match, so that is fine, but you can change these. Loads of different options, but in this case we want first name, and then the email, we want email as well. And you can see we've got the option for them to be required or not. We're going to keep that for email, and we'll actually set that to be required as well for first name. Okay, so that is all done now. That is set up and ready to go. So we can also now publish our opt-in page, and that will basically complete the whole process. So we'll hit publish, change it to opt-in, and then click publish. And this time we're going to view the page. And as you can see, blisteringly fast loading speed, even with this high resolution image. And our page is now live. The funnel is live. If anyone wants to go on the URL and have a look at it, feel free to do so. You can go through to the thank you page, you'll be able to do that, and you'll be able to download the lead magnet as well. So there you have a full working lead funnel built in Convertri. I hope that you found that useful. Does anyone have any questions on that demonstration specifically now before we move on? Feel free if you do. I'm just going to have a drink of water while you guys think of some questions. Okay, so we've got a question about these light blue lines on the page. So you can see them here. All they are is guidelines. They basically are the safe zone, so anything between these two blue lines will definitely be shown on any sized monitor. However, you can change them if you want to. These were set up quite some time ago, so the majority of monitors now are a lot bigger. So if you go to page, not page, if you go to display and then the guideline width, you can edit them like so. We'll keep them at 960 though, which was the default. We can restore that like so. Yeah, so that's just basically just a little guide. It's not like a rule that anything outside of here won't show. As you can see on the page, the whole page is showing on my screen. Robert's asking how it looks on mobile. You can see it in the editor. You can't really see that on the desktop page, like on the live page. I can't get my mobile screen to show you, unfortunately. But you can see it here. That's what it will look like on a mobile device. Feel free to go and have a look on your own mobile. If you want to use your phone to search the web page up, you'll get this up there as well. And Agatha, I'm sorry that yours seems not to be linking right. If you want us to have a look at it for you, feel free to email us in at support@convertri.com, and we'll definitely have a look at your page and see where you've gone wrong. Or if you want to, feel free to watch the replay back and slow it down. I know sometimes in these live shows it can be quite fast. You may have just missed one small step. So not to worry. Any other questions about that demo then for now? If you've got anything more general, don't worry, we'll have another question session at the end. If not, we can move on to the next section of the webinar, which is the editor hacks. And that is basically just a small selection of my favorite tips and tricks when using Convertri. Okay, so we're going to move on to that now then. So we'll just come out of this funnel for now. We don't need that anymore. And we'll go into this page that I've already got here set up. And this is a Convertri template. So the first thing that I would recommend doing, especially if you're new to using Convertri, is putting on our element guidelines feature. So you can open the page builder, click display, and then turn on element outlines. And what that does is it puts these hot pink lines all the way around your element. As you can see here, it's literally around every single element on the page. And why I think this is really useful is because it shows you where the element starts and where it ends. So that means you know where to click if you want to select a certain element. So let's say we had them off and you wanted to select the text here. You don't know where the element ends necessarily, so you might accidentally click here, and that's obviously selecting the backing panel. But with the element outlines turned on, you know exactly where to click, so you know to select within these pink lines. And that's why I think it's really useful, not only from a user interface perspective, but also from a design perspective as well. You know where the elements are in terms of where they finish, so you know whether they're overlapping and that sort of thing. It just makes designing pages a lot easier, especially if you're like reshuffling things. You can see exactly where the boundaries of each element are. So let's move on to our first real tip, which is removing sections. Let's say that you want to remove this whole menu section here on the page. You obviously don't really want to sit here clicking each element and then clicking delete. because that can take quite a bit of time, especially if in this case you've got loads of text elements. So instead of doing that, you select the background panel. You can see here, this black panel, it's moving everything within it, so everything is contained within it. So once you've selected that, you just either hit delete on your keyboard, or you can select this little trash can icon, and that will get rid of the whole section of the page. And now you can see we've got this nice big white space where we can either add something new or just get rid of that entirely. And if we do want to get rid of that entirely, this is where the next tip comes in, and it is our remove white space feature. So let's say we've just removed that section, but we don't really want to add anything else to the page. We just want to get rid of this white space now. We click on our backing panel for the next section below the white space, or the first element in general, which in this case is our backing panel. And then we come up to our toolbar and hit remove white space above. And what that does is it snaps this now up to the next element directly. So you can see About Us has hit the next panel and the white space has disappeared, which is obviously really useful if you want to get rid of a massive empty space of empty bit of page really quickly. Instead of dragging it all the way up, just hit one button and it does it all for you. Yeah, we'll have a recording posted of this session, no worries. If you've missed any of it, we'll definitely have a replay up about the beginning of next week. I'll actually quickly show you where that is in our knowledge base. So help.convertri.com, and then getting started webinars. This is where they're all posted, and it will go live there about beginning of next week, I'd say. Okay, so back to the editor now, and let's say that you actually, we've shown you how to remove white space, remove a section, but let's say you came onto a page and you actually wanted to create a little bit of space on the page. So you wanted to add a new section. So what you can do, instead of dragging each individual element down, so you can see we've got loads of images here, it would take us ages to move them all down individually. What we can do is select the background panel that we want to move down. So we want the space to be above this panel. We hit Shift on our keyboard, hold Shift, and then click and drag down like so. As you can see, it's moving all of this down to create space, and it's also moved down everything below this element. So the whole page has been shifted down, and we've got this white space now to put something else on our page. So that's obviously really useful. It saves a lot of time in the editor. You're not having to mess around with each individual element and move them all one by one. Okay, the next thing I want to show you, it's also a keyboard shortcut, but this time it's to do with cloning an element. So in the first demonstration, you'll have seen that I actually selected an element and clicked clone up here. But if you're selecting an element that's right at the bottom of the page, you don't really want to have to scroll all the way up to the top every time. So instead, we've got a keyboard shortcut which will achieve the same result. So select your element, click Alt and then drag. And you need to hold the Alt key down while you drag it, and that will give you a clone of the element you've selected. So you can see with these images, they've all been duplicated like so. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is just basically some more of our alignment tools. So you'll have seen some of them in action when we were setting up our form, but they're also quite useful if you're just trying to order other elements on your page, say in this case images. So we're going to add a backing panel, as you can see, like so, just so that all these images are contained within the same panel. So I've put that there. I'm going to send it to the back now and then bring it forward, and that basically puts it behind these images. So as you can see, they're all contained, and we want them to be a lot neater than they are at the moment in this panel. So to do that, we come back to our alignment tools, hit the drop down, And in this case, we're going to use the middle align tool, and that will snap them all to the middle of this panel. And then the next thing we're going to want to do is evenly space them out. So like we did with our form, but this time justify horizontally. Like so. And that basically gives it an even space between each image so that they are all evenly spread out and it looks nice and neat on the page. Excellent. So that is the tips and tricks done. The last thing that I'm going to show you about the editor, probably the most important thing that I'll talk to you about today, and it is revolving around our mobile editor. So I briefly showed you in the demo how the mobile page will automatically be generated for you. But what I want to explain to you now is how that works. And basically, this is helpful because it allows you to understand how to build a page in Convertri that is going to mobilize well. And the reason that's important is because basically it's going to save you a hell of a lot of time. You don't have to move loads of things around, because if you can build a page that mobilizes well, Convertri will do all the work for you. So let's take a look at our page on desktop. As you can see, we've got our logos, we've got our image, and then we've got this section here. And in this section, we've got bread and we've got the text describing it. And these come below each other because that's how a user would read them. However, in our mobile view, you can see, if we scroll to the top, that it's actually decided to place bread, pastry, and coffee first, and then the description text. And this is obviously not really what a user would want, because they're going to be thinking, oh, bread, and then they're like pastry, coffee, but then the descriptions all come one after the other. So they're not actually linked to their title. Now there is a reason for this, and that is because Convertri's mobile algorithm reads the page from left to right on desktop. If we scroll up to the top again. So it's reading this logo first. This is the first element it's reading. Then it's reading "We are open," and that's on one row. And then it's going, what's next? It's the image. And then it's going, oh, we're hitting bread, and then we're hitting pastry, and then we're hitting coffee. It's not actually realizing that these are linked, or that we want them to be linked. Now, there is a really easy workaround for this, and you may have noticed that we've been doing it all the way through, and it is using these background panels to make sure that everything is contained. And that is because the mobile algorithm understands containment. So if we now hit panel, add one to our page, and then resize it so it's only big enough to fit these elements in, we'll send it to the back and bring it forward again. And then we'll do the same for pastry and coffee. We're not too worried about how it looks at the moment, because this is just for the example of mobilization, so it doesn't matter that it's a bit uneven. We'll send it to the back, bring it forward again, and then lastly with coffee we'll do the same. Okay, so now if we go to our mobile view, you'll see that Convertri has now ordered them so that they are all actually in line, like so. So they're now contained and they're now ordered correctly. And you'll notice that coffee is actually come first, and that's because it's higher than the others. So we'll move that down. And we've now got bread, pastry, and coffee in that order. And that's because it's going from left to right, and instead of reading the text first and then the bottom text, it's reading panel and then it's thinking, okay, these elements are also contained, so I'll display that all at once. And it's doing the same for pastry and coffee. So that's really useful to know if you're building a page. Make sure you're using your panels and you're working with containment, because it will save you a lot of time in the mobile view. And we'll just do one more example of that, this time using our social icons. As you can see on mobile, they're currently displayed vertically, but we don't really want them to be like that. We want them to display horizontally just because it looks a lot better. So we'll add our panel again, and we'll resize it so that it's containing our social icons. Center back, bring forward, and again go to mobile, and you can see it's now displaying them all as one horizontal line because they're contained in this panel. Now, one thing to bear in mind with mobile view though is there is a maximum width for pixels. So if we go to element properties and then and then positioning is where our sizing is. If we make this bigger than 350 and then go back to mobile, you'll see that it's no longer displaying them horizontally because this is too large for the mobile view. So it needs to be below 300 to be safe. And then you can see it's reordering them fine at that size. So one thing to bear in mind, make sure your width, if you're using it for mobile, is smaller than 300 if you want the containment to be applied. Okay, so that is going to do it for today, guys. That concludes the demonstration, and we've just finished off the editor hacks and gone through the mobile page builder. I hope you've all found that useful, and I'm now going to open up the floor to any questions you guys have got, anything relating to the first demo where we built the lead funnel, or the second one where we did the editor tips and tricks. If you've got any questions relating to those, feel free to ask. If you want me to show you something again, or if you want to just ask a question about Convertri in general, please feel free. Thank you for the nice feedback, Agatha and Harry. It is great to know you enjoyed it. It's always really nice to help people out with Convertri. And we've got a question here, actually. Someone's asking if we can clone an element to another page. So just like we can clone an element by clicking clone or by using Alt drag, like so. This is obviously just for the same page, but we can actually clone an element to another page within our funnel. So to do that, select the element that you want to clone, hit the drop down, and then clone element to another page. And you can even clone it to a different domain or a different funnel. But we're going to leave it as this one. And we'll clone it to our opt-in, like so. And you can see you can choose the position. So original, top or bottom. We'll click with original and hit clone. And then if we come out of this page, we'll hit save and go to our opt-in page. You see we'll get a message here that says importing one cloned element. And then as you can see, in exactly the same position as on the first page, we've got our cloned element. And I think that is a really cool feature. If you want something on another page, you can have it done like that. So in answer to your question, Matthew, I can see you've said, can you default an item across all pages? You can do it like that if you want to. You could have it on one page and clone it to all your other pages, but you would have to do that individually. So what I'd suggest doing instead, if you want something across all pages, is using our shared headers and footers feature. And this is at a funnel level, so you have one for each funnel, and you can access them on this left-hand bar here, so header and footer. And these are your master headers and footers. So if you want to add one to your page, you can say you wanted to put a logo in. I'll just use a bit of text for this example. Let's say you just had, this is my logo. If I had this as an actual image and then click save, and then I go over to my other pages, And then if I go to page, headers and footers, I can turn them on here. So let's say I'm turning on the header. You'll see that it is actually giving me the whole design that I just created. Obviously, it's not a very detailed design. We've just got a bit of text, but I'm sure you guys can come up with something a lot better. And that's going to be across every page. So if you went to each page in your funnel and did what I just showed you, turn on the header, that would actually apply all of that, all the design you made in your master header to each page. So if you have like a header where you've got a menu, or like you said, Matthew, you've got a logo or like a bit of welcome text, you don't have to add that to each page separately. You can use our shared headers and footers feature and have it applied to all your pages in the funnel automatically. No problem, Matthew. I'm glad I could answer that for you. And Jerry's asking that if he wants to send people to a page, for example, xyz.com, and you have an opt-in form on that page, you don't need to have it as xyz.com/opt-in, do you? No, Jerry, you don't. That is just the path that I used. So I could actually just publish it without a path. I don't have to put the word opt-in there. It will still be an opt-in page. If you want it to just be the root domain, that's fine. You just get rid of the path and then hit publish. And then that would be the link you would send people to. But if you do have a path, so say you did have opt-in like we've got, that is the link you'll need to send people to. So it won't automatically redirect them to opt-in. You actually have to give them the exact URL that you publish it to. So it's your choice if you want to have a page path or not. I've done it in this case because I actually think I've already got a page published at my root domain. But yeah, you don't have to have it as /opt-in. That's completely up to you. No problem at all, Jerry. Glad I can help you out with that one. And we've got another question about using a custom domain. So Matthew's asked, what about using custom URL rather than the Convertri domain, which is not a problem. I'm not going to be able to show you the whole setup now, unfortunately, Matthew, just because it can take a while for the changes to take place. But what I can do is show you where you go in Convertri to do this, and I can then drop the help document in the chat as well. So come to your account section, and then on the left-hand side, domains. Adding a new subdomain is what we did, is what we were using there. So you can see example.convertri.com. To have a custom domain, you're going to need to use Convertri with a new domain. So you click add, and this is where you would type in your domain. Now, it is worth noting you'd need to purchase your domain before you can do this. So if you wanted to have the domain as hello.com, I'm sure that's been taken, but you go to a site such as GoDaddy, register your domain, and then you come back to Convertri and add it here. And then that's when you have to go through the setup. So I'll drop the setup in the chat now. This link to the article will be where you need to go to see how to add a new domain to Convertri that is completely customized. Okay, any other questions then before we end the webinar today? Anything else at all? An add-on like Cloudflare, it's not necessary. You don't need it to set up a custom domain. Again, that's really just personal preference. No problem, guys. I'm glad that you're all enjoying the webinars. They really are fun to do and rewarding. It's great to get a lot of you guys who come onto the call with not as much experience, get you sort of up and running with Convertri. So no problem. You're more than welcome. And it is worth pointing out, if you do have any further questions before I head off, you can email us. Say you think of something later, you can email us at support@convertri.com. I'll drop that in the chat as well. And we also have a Facebook group where you can join. There's other Convertri users, and there's loads of people in there that can help you out with any queries you've got. I'm in there myself. We've got Neil in there, Andy, and other members of staff who are more than happy to help you with any queries you've got. And also other Convertri users that are looking at similar things. They want to build similar things in the app. So it's a really good place for beginners to get to and, interact with more experienced users. Okay, so on that note then, guys, I'm going to end it here. Thank you all again for coming. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all again very soon.